that into 96, and then he says, okay, wait a minute, I'm 100% completely wrong. And so what does Bill Gates do? He goes to some of his technicians and he says, how many people are currently working in the internet, either up here in Seattle or down in Silicon Valley? How many people? And his guys tell him 3,000 people. And so what he immediately does is he builds a separate campus and he hires 3,500 people to get involved in the internet. And it's one of the biggest adaptations, one of the biggest pivots in technology. And then of course he comes out with the Microsoft Explorer, and because he's dominating the disk operating software business, he's got 90% of the share now in internet search. I'm bringing that up to you because old fogies like me know nothing about this space. But I'm telling you, we're getting up to speed, and we're getting up to speed very, very quickly. And so I just want to spend a couple of minutes explaining to you what I think has happened. Okay? Bitcoin really gets hot in 2013. Ethereum, which is a souped up version of Bitcoin, comes out in 2016, and then we start these ICOs. And things are going very, very well. But you have to remember that you're transacting in them, you guys have an interest in it, and it's a cottage industry from a lay person and an honest person's perspective, but it's a booming industry for very, very dishonest people. Because dishonest people are using this form of currency, this form of commodity transfer in a way that helps them buy drugs, it helps them buy arms, it helps them buy explosives. And so it booms, and it starts this very, very, very big boom. Now, a lot of guys are not going to tell you this, but I'm going to share this with you. The decimation of ISIS. Okay, the United States government, after the 2017 inaugural, Donald Trump made a decision to change the rules of engagement on ISIS. The decimation of ISIS affected these coins. It affected the currency. You say, what is he talking about? Okay, these guys were transacting in those currencies. Okay, you have to remember the media portrays ISIS as this radicalized Islamic terrorist group. But what ISIS really was, it was formed by Iraqi intelligence officers who transferred from the Republican Guard into the insurgency, formed ISIS under the banner of ISIS so that they could trade oil. And what they did was they went out and they captured oil fields in between the border of Iraq and Syria, and they were trading oil on the black market. And how were they trading the oil, and what were they using as a form of currency? They were using this stuff. And so one of the main reasons why you saw this boom had to do with ISIS, and one of the main reasons why you saw a bust had to do with ISIS. Now, no one's telling you that, but we wiped out 98% of ISIS, and that's one of the big reasons. But the question now is, are these things survivable, and are these things something that mainstream people like Jamie Dimon or somebody like Brian Monahan at Bank of America, are they going to embrace it? Are they going to accept this? And my answer to that is a resounding yes, but we've got to get through this stuff, right? The boom happened in 2016 with the invention of the ERC-20, okay, and it allowed these tokens to form, and things look pretty good. ISIS craters, and then you get the great crash of 2018. It turns out that these apps didn't work the way people thought. And at the end of the day, we know that they're going to work the way they thought. The woman that was up here earlier talking about the thin pipe taking a minute to transfer an email. What we know, and what I'm absolutely confident of, is that in 5 years, you're going to be able to make an electronic transfer of value, totally secure, totally independent from American Express, totally independent from Visa, and it's going to change the landscape of the world, and it's going to end a lot of the frictional activity that's going on in the world. One of the reasons why the SEC is super concerned about this, it's going to have a very big impact on the securities industry, investment banking, commercial banking, retail banking, and the credit card industry. But this is happening, and it's happening quickly. But this is what we've been missing. We need a custody solution. We have to focus on EFTs. There's no regulatory framework right now. Now, one of the things that I worked on when I was working for then candidate Trump was what are we going to do with the SEC? How are we going to reformat the SEC? And when we put Clayton in at the SEC, one of the mandates was to figure this out. So there are people that are getting into the broker-dealer business. Maybe some of you are out there that are getting into the broker-dealer business. There are people that are creating ICOs, and there are people that want to be in the hedge fund business or the ETF business surrounded by Bitcoin, but you have a huge a huge gap from the SEC. They are not ready for this. But when they become ready, and I predict this is over the next 12 to 18 months, your industry is going to be ahead of them. But when they become ready, then you're going to get an influx of a tremendous amount of competitors, guys like JP Morgan and Bank of America. But institutional money, that would be us. Okay, we run $11 billion, and we're going to get into the space. And I'll make a prediction for everybody in this room. In addition to these indexes that are out there, none of which have really caught any real traction, there will be a group that comes up with an index that people look at and say, okay, that is the Dow Jones of Bitcoin. But you're also going to need a volatility index married to that index. Okay, so that's coming. And once you can measure the volatility, and once you can get traders on both sides of that activity, muting the volatility, you'll see this thing really, really blossom. And so I want to end my remarks. If it's okay, I've got 10 minutes, so I'm going to take some questions from people. But what I want to end my remarks with is this is coming. The security token offering boom is coming. And once the security offering boom takes place in 2019, you will see a resurgence in market activity. There's a great book on the internet called Pipes. And what happened with the internet is something very, very similar that's happening right now in these digital currencies. They always start with some level of nefarious activity. What got unfortunately this is a true story, but what got the internet transformed into something where you could play video over the internet was a demand from the porn industry. That's just basically the facts. And so what ended up happening was, as internet porn became very, very popular, they developed the right plumbing and they developed the right pipes to move video over the internet. What's happening right now is that this got started by road players primarily. I mean, it got started originally by geniuses, engineering geniuses, but then the road players came in and subverted it. Most of those road players have been wiped off the face of the earth. When it moves to the security token offering, that's when it's going to be a real legitimate thing. So I have time for questions, so I'm going to take a few questions before I walk off stage. Yes, sir.
First of all, thanks for coming to speak with us. I just wanted to ask you, I guess, your thoughts on Skygroup's, traditional business of being a fund of funds and how that strategy applies to the emerging cryptocurrency, crypto fund space. And I guess a related follow-up about any advice you might have for emerging managers that are looking to start their own fund.
So I'm going to repeat the questions. People can hear it. Questions about traditional fund of funds business. How does that relate to this space? What are my thoughts on that traditional business? And then what advice do I have for people that are basically emerging right now or thinking about creating funds? And so our business is a very, very separate business. Basically what we do is we're an outsourced CIO for people that want to be in the hedge fund industry. And so that outsourced CIO stuff is I think it stays around as long as we have very, very good performance. The fund of funds moniker has gotten beaten up heavily by the press. And that's a rough thing for our industry because we're operating at 7, 8, 9% return with very, very low volatility. And so when I hear the nonsense that, well, you're a fund of funds and blah, 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 it's really not that relevant to us. But we'll be creating a separate standalone digital currency unit inside of Skyway, so it'll be separate. But on the fund space, if you're out there as an entrepreneur and you're creating a fund, the thing I would tell you about, number one, is watch your expenses. Okay, be incremental in terms of your thinking process. Can I take one more question? Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir. Do you have a question? Yes, sir.
Why would a viable business undertake an STO versus a traditional ICO and a public market?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, the question is, why would a viable business take an STO over an ICO? Okay, and so in my research, and again, what's interesting about me is that you guys probably know way more about this space than I do, and I'm coming at it and getting up to speed quickly. But in my research and talking to people at JP